How's it going, friends? Reckless Yuki here. Hopefully, you all are having a fantastic day, night, morning, evening, whatever time it is that you're watching this video. I hope it is fantastic. But anyways, this video is going to be a Beast Skylake build vlog, basically showing you some pieces and parts thrown together in a Skylake build that's just going to be an absolute beast for 1080p gaming. And before we get into all the parts, pieces, and everything else like that, I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit behind the dude who I'm building this for, as far as just explaining what his needs and wants were and how they over-escalated quickly to the machine that you're seeing built here on the screen now. Anyways, so as many of you know, I am currently out of the military and I'm going to school using my benefits to get some sort of piece of paper to show that I'm smart. And while I'm going to school, I'm able to make some friends because I think of myself as somewhat of a humorous person, and that usually attracts other humorous people. Well, I made a new friend here while I was at school. His name is Austin, and I'm not going to go into last names or anything like that. But anyways, he was in the Army, and he's an Army vet, and he is also going to the school, same degree program and everything. So we kind of clicked in as far as our kind of weird, messed up sense of humor. And anyways, we were kind of talking about things a little bit, and he explained to me that he's a gamer, and I explained how I am also a gamer. And we kind of converged in this topic, talking about like PCs and consoles, and then I was like talking to him about as far as like his ideas or thoughts as far as venturing into the PC Master Race, because currently he's just playing on the PlayStation 4. And so I invited him over to my apartment to show him my setup, to show him my PC and what it could do. I let him play Battlefield 4 on the PC at 4K, absolutely maxed out settings. He thought it was really cool. And then I let him jump over to my other monitor, which is a BenQ, which is able to play up to 144 hertz, so he could kind of see what it's like to play a first-person shooter at like super ridiculous frame rates. And after playing around with things and showing him like what these machines were able to do, he kind of determined that he only needs 1080p at 60 frames per second. And after determining that, I showed him the difference between the PC running 1080p Battlefield 4 at 60 frames per second compared to the PS4 running at, I don't know, whatever frame rate, like 900p at 30 frames per second, and kind of just showed him the difference of the PS4 versus the PC and what the PC is capable of doing for a price point that's not so much more than the PlayStation 4. And he was very impressed. So after he determined that he wants to venture into the gaming PC race, I offered to build him this PC for him. All he had to do was buy the parts, and I would be happy to build it for him. So that's what we're doing in this video. And in order, like when we first started picking out the parts, he initially wanted something like, maybe like a $700-800 build at most, which is all you really need to max out 1080p games. 1080p gaming has gone ridiculously cheaper, and you could even go cheaper than that. But I decided to make sure he has some like quality components within the system, not just something like super weak, because he also has a lot of other things that he's interested in, like music production. He really wants to run Ableton Live and dabble in DJing a bit, so he kind of needs a strong PC in order to do all that. Not something ridiculous, but I offered I recommended a Core i5 Intel processor, which will be beefy enough to run any game, as well as handle Ableton Live. And then as far as RAM, like I was offering 8 gigabytes of RAM, and just like a really simple system with a decent graphics card. I was offering or recommending he get maybe a 970 at most. So the machine here is obviously not any of those parts. This machine has a lot of higher end parts, and I'll kind of break it down as far as how we got to each one of these things. But just keep in mind that he wanted a system that was able to play games at 1080p, 60 frames per second, maxed out settings, and he also wanted to do his music production. So anyways, going through the parts list now, I picked out the motherboard that I picked out was a Gigabyte GA-Z170X-Gaming 7. And the reason why I picked out this motherboard, not to, be thrown off by like the Gaming 7, I could care less about the gaming peripheral, but this had a lot of nice features that I thought that he would really enjoy using, especially with the recommendations or the requirements that he put on me. This thing is able to, overclock a i7-6700K easily up to 4.6 gigahertz with just the auto overclock. It's within the BIOS. I looked at it when I finally finished everything. I was looking through the BIOS. It's super easy to do. It also has some really high-end audio. So he wants to do gaming and he really likes audio. So this thing has the creative audio, allowing him to use scout mode for first-person shooters, as well as the XBX Pro Studios, so that he could tweak audio for movies and music however he feels, just to kind of give it a little bit more oomph, which I think is pretty cool. After my experience with the Creative Sound Blaster X7, I have to say I'm a pretty big fan of what Creative offers. So I figured having all this into a motherboard would be a pretty good deal, especially because he won't have to worry about anything later on as far as getting any external things to give him the best sound experience possible. And then it also has a lot of high-end capacitors, as well as the ability to swap out the operational amp, which is something I thought was pretty cool. So in the future, if he ever really gets into it where he wants to try to test out swapping amps, he can with this motherboard and this computer. So I thought that was also really cool. And the main reason, or one of the main reasons I also picked out this motherboard for him, is the fact that he wants to get into music production. So it has this thing called a USB DAC up, which is able to deliver noise-free power to audio interfaces, which I'm guessing one of the things that those audio engineers really fear is if you plug something into the USB, especially if you're working with kind of on the cheaper side of equipment, is that the power fluctuations from the USB is going to interfere with the analog to digital conversion of the music, and then that could mess up your recording. So I thought this would be good to make sure that there would be no issues when he's trying to do whatever he is trying to do, and that it'll be a pretty cool experience for the motherboard. It has every feature that you could possibly want, except for, unfortunately, Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi wasn't featured on this motherboard, which kind of took me away because it was something I was for sure it had, but it definitely didn't have it. As I looked through the box and tried to find something to enable Wi-Fi, it does not, but we could always just get a USB Wi-Fi card or even a PCIe Wi-Fi card to throw in there. But yeah, it didn't have Wi-Fi, so we just ended up hardwiring a wire all the way to his room, which is honestly the best solution. But in the future, if he's possibly not able to do that, we can just get some sort of Wi-Fi solution for him that wouldn't be any big deal. And then let's move on to the processor. So the processor that we picked out is an Intel i7 6700K Skylake. So it's the brand new edition of Intel. Is like a really badass processor. And the reason why he went with this over the i5 is mainly because when we were like shopping for the parts and putting things into a basket to check out, the i5 was completely out of stock. So he said, F it, and just went with the i7 so he could have it now. I mean, that's the only reason, which I'm not going to, say that it was needed. Like, the i7 isn't needed to run Ableton Live or anything like that, even like the Sweet 9 or whatever it is up to now. But he just wanted it now, so that's what he got. So he picked out an i7. It's just a beastly overkill processor for what he's doing. But at least in the future, he won't ever need, or he won't ever be lacking as far as power for anything that he's planning on doing. Now, as far as cooling this processor, I decided to go with the Enermax LIQTECH 240 all-in-one cooler. And this cooler was really highly recommended by Jay's 2 cents back in late 2014 in a video, which he described it as built like a tank. He really liked basically everything to do with this. Well, for the most part, he liked it over other all-in-one coolers. And the reason why, if you're seeing in the video that the fans are installed in a pull configuration instead of a push, is mainly so that he can flip the RPM switches to adjust the RPMs if needed, because those fans have the special RPM switch where you could lower or raise the maximum RPM. So you could kind of like try to control how fast it will spin up to try to control noise. So that's one of the reasons we installed it that way, and also just because he likes the look of having the radiator there instead of having the fans. But anyways, moving on to the RAM we installed. The RAM is a pair of G.Skill Ripjaws 5s, DDR4 at 2400 megahertz, and this is a 16 gigabyte kit, 2 8 gigabyte sticks. And the reason why I decided to go with this is because, well, he's already throwing a bunch of money at this, so I figured I wouldn't want him to be limited with his RAM selection. And I know that 8 gigabytes of RAM is kind of the ideal recommended for budget gaming builds, but 8 gigabytes of RAM seems to be kind of getting filled up pretty easily nowadays with the game as well as the operating system. So I decided to give him a little bump with 16 gigabytes of RAM. And also that'll definitely help out with his music production, just to give him a little bit of leeway so that he won't have a bottleneck at the RAM as far as whenever he's trying to do his audio production. So that's one of the reasons we went with this. And also G.Skill is just an awesome brand. I never had an issue with the G.Skill RAM I had before. So I think it was a great RAM choice, as well as it also matches his aesthetics of his build. And then next is the EVGA GTX 980 Superclock for a graphics card. Now, I initially recommended just going with a 970 at the most. I mean, we could even go lower, like with a 960 for just some 1080p gaming. But I figured that he would want the best experience possible without ever having to lower the settings, just basically set things on max and be good. And the card that you see on the screen might look a little familiar because it was one of my old GTX 980s I had in my system in my three-way setup. And I basically sold it to him for $350, which is the price of a new GTX 970. So he's getting a awesome 980 that I for sure know how well it's able to perform. So I mean, it's able to perform just fine. And it's just a beast card for 1080p gaming. So that's why he went with it. I sold it to him. He's happy with it, and I'm happy not to deal with the nonsense of eBay. So there was one of my cards, then the other two are already gone and in use. So that's a pretty cool deal for him. So he has this like amazing beast graphics card in his beast system for everything that he needs to do. And now for the power supply that we picked out, it's a EVGA Next 650G. It's basically the SuperNOVA, or along the lines of the SuperNOVA series, and it's a pretty cheap power supply. I think I got it for like $60. And with the power supply, like many people will tell you, is you don't want to go super cheap with the power supply, especially when you're using high-end components like this, because if your power supply fails, it's probably going to take something along with it, and all the components that I listed so far aren't cheap. So that would definitely be a very bad day for him. So I decided to make sure to at least go with a SuperNOVA, but without spending a whole lot on features that he's probably never going to use. And the SuperNOVA is running great. It's able to just deliver the power needed for his current setup. And I don't foresee him ever needing to upgrade anything. I don't foresee him having to, add another graphics card for SLI, because all he plans on doing is 1080p at 60 frames, and that's it. That's all he's content with, especially after gaming on my setup. He determined that he doesn't need any of this. He just wants 1080p 60 frames, so he is good. So that's the perfect power supply for him. And then as far as what is enclosing all this like monstrous goodness, it's a Corsair Vengeance C70 case. And this isn't a new case by any means. This is definitely I think it's about maybe 1 or 2 years old at least. And the reason why I picked out this case for him is because he's an Army vet. I figure he will like that militaristic aesthetics of it, as well as the fact that it just looks like an ammo crate and it has handles to make it easy to move, because I know he's going to be moving around in the future. So I figure that this would be a good addition or a good solution for his case, and it has plenty of room to expand if for whatever reason in the future he wants to do some like water cooling, or if he wants to add things, he can, and it has plenty of room in there. So it's just a great case for what he needs, and it definitely fits him and suits him, is how I feel. Anyways, so that's it. That's the build. That's like all the pieces and parts and why I picked it. So some of you guys might agree with me. Many of you probably won't, but that's okay. I decided to explain a little bit about his situation, what he wanted, and kind of like how we came to the determination of these parts. So this is by far overkill for 1080p 60 frames, and this is by far overkill for music production. But it's nice to have, and that's one of the things, is he wanted a computer that's nice to have. So anyways, that's it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you are curious on any of the parts that I used in this video, I'll have an affiliate links to Amazon in the description below, so you could also build one of these if you are so curious. Now, as far as the performance of this, the performance is absolutely great. Like, it booted up like first thing without an issue. The only issue we had was getting the motherboard to work with the Wi-Fi, and that's because it didn't have any drivers installed, and we also didn't go with any optical drivers, so we couldn't use the included disk. So what I had to do was end up going to the Gigabyte website on his MacBook Air and taking a USB stick and formatting it into a exFAT format so that it could work on both Mac and Windows, and then just downloaded all the files, threw it on the USB, threw it on his computer, and installed them, and then everything worked perfectly fine. So it was up running and no issues. We even got that we haven't got the graphics card like overclocked to 1492 megahertz. Mainly because we were able to push to over 15, but it started getting some like that like infamous coil whine. So we decided to back down the overclock a little bit. At least he was more comfortable with it being backed down a little bit. So I obliged. And anyways, that is just an awesome overclock for the car. So he's never going to have to worry about any sort of gaming hits. He's going to be gaming fantastic for a good long time. But anyways, Now, that's the end of my rambling. I'm going to stop now, and I'm going to end. Hopefully, you guys enjoy the video. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll talk to you guys again in the next one, all right? Bye-bye.